So basically, Milarepa was able to realize his nature and enlightenment, within that lifetime, and so Naropa was the guru, his guru's guru, who also had to go through trials and tribulations, Marpa, and that's where a lot of these practices of the, working with the energy and things. So once we move into this Vajrayana path and things, what exists inside of us is, besides our physical body, is our psychic body. And so that's where the channels, we do this work with breathing, and with the channels, we got the right channel, the left channel, the central channel, but we also have, I think it's something like 72,000 other channels that run throughout our entire body, smaller channels. And these channels meet up in these junctions, which we call chakras, which are energy places. So in the Vajrayana path, we're beginning to work with that. But there's a lot, besides, of course, the motivation there needs to be that bodhicitta motivation, where we're doing this in order to reach enlightenment for the benefit of others, for the pain we see in others and the ability to try to bring them along. Otherwise, it can start to get into things like Milarepa first had, like with black magic and, developing different types of energy and power. So it's important to have that, that bodhisattva type of thought, even if we're not bodhisattva yet. That's that wishing stage we've talked about before, the wish to be able to do that. And so the purpose, the meaning of what we're doing with the practices is for that end, to become enlightened, to be able to, then benefit others. So within the Vajrayana path, the Tantrayana path, there's different levels, which I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's lower levels, which is like a Kriya Yoga, which starts to work more with how how you're taking care of your environment, making sure everything's clean yourself, and then we move up into, I guess I should say that there's, when Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava came to Tibet, the followers of that is what's called the old school, Nyingmapa school. So the Nyingmas were there, and then there's, what's talked about as the new school, the Sarma, which is the Kargyupa, the Sakyapa, and the Galupa, those three. So within it, the three new schools break up the path, the Vajrayana path, slightly different than the Nyingma do, but actually they have mostly the same things within them. So in the lower paths, they're included. So in the Nyingma, again, I don't want to go into this, but there's like nine paths, which the final three, which is basically has to do with Mahayoga, Anu Yoga, and Ati Yoga. Ati Yoga is what's known as Dzogchen and things. But in the when you're working with the Maha Yoga in the Nyingma school, the Maha is based a lot more on anger, and the Anu Yoga has to do more with desire. And then really the Dzogchen Ati Yoga is more to do with mental, our mental energy and working with that. But in order to reach those stages, especially the other three schools, they'll begin to emphasize. But it's the same thing as I said in the earlier part of the within the Nyingma system. There's what's called the development stage and completion stage. So the development stage is beginning to receive initiation. So you receive the empowerment from a Vajra teacher, a Vajra guru, who initiates us and begins to allow us to identify ourselves with the particular deity that is most conducive for us. So as we know, we have these five type of, there's much more than five, there's thousands, but the five main of ignorance, and then of anger and desire and jealousy and greed, and pride. All of those also relate to 5 families, 5 Buddha families. I don't know if you've ever heard of those or not, but there's 5 Buddha, 5 Buddha families. They each have their own different colors and, more or less different type of environment or mandala. And so those relate, to our 5 chakras. They relate to the 5 delusions, as I mentioned. They relate to the 5 type of elements, and begin to learn to transform, how to transform. So I guess the best thing to say is that the Vajrayana path is the path of transformation. It's like alchemy. It learns to take things. So in the Sutrayana path, you have these different type of things that the anger that, overwhelms you, or the desire and greed or ignorance, and you'll have certain things to kind of block them. In the Vajrayana path, there is no blocking. Everything is part of the path. We begin to use all energies as part of the path. So when our ignorance, when our ability to not know properly and to know wrongly manifests as becoming upset with somebody, and it has anger, and that begins to predominate. We all have all of these, but some of them predominate more. We begin to work with different, families and take the initiation. And that's why we see these deities when we look and see that they have different colors. They hold different things. There's many different symbology there. They're archetypes, to awaken us that this is the pure aspect of the Buddha mind expressing itself. It comes out and that kind of wakes us up, in a sense. It gets in touch with the reality within ourselves. We're never separated from our true nature, our Buddha nature, our real nature. It's always within there, but it's ignored. So when it becomes ignored and things, then of course we're overwhelmed with that and the energy we create, within our daily environment. So when we begin to work within this path, which is the development stage, we begin to understand. We receive the initiation, and the initiation has many things in it to purify different parts of our energy and within our system, and we begin to focus ourselves on the empty nature of our mind. So from the empty nature of our mind, the essence of our mind, which is emptiness, which doesn't have any thingness to it, but we continuously cling to something. This is me, and this is because of that, this is my world. Because that's always there, we go into the empty nature, which is then, recognizing our Buddha nature, our Dharmakaya mind. And from that Dharmakaya mind, seeing that in reality, on the absolute level, there's no separation, there's no difference between my mind and the Guru's mind, my mind and the Buddha's mind. There is no difference. Can't be found. You look everywhere within your entire system, cannot be found. So when you begin to identify with that, from that empty state, but you realize you need to arise from that empty state in order to communicate in others, that's where you then begin to take on like the seed syllable, and you create the world, the environment. The world is empty, your mind is empty, and from that, you kind of arise within whatever this yoga practice might be. And from that, you realize that only sensitive Sambhogakaya Buddhas can see you in that stage, so you decide to take on the Nirmanakaya form. That bodhicitta attitude to help others has a force that you take rebirth. So when we talk about, in the Tibetan tradition, when we talk about Rinpoches, tulkus, like Lama Lobsang, Lama Zopa, others, these are tulkus, these are Nirmanakaya Buddhas that have, reincarnated for the benefit of others. Okay. So when we begin to then do this practice, we then, from the beginning of the Dharmakaya, we begin to take on the what do you call Vajra pride. So it's not our ordinary diluted pride. It's the Vajra pride in our pure nature, in the reality of our mind. Unbelievably powerful. This is what's called the resultant path, because what we're doing is we're taking the result into the present. So instead of, oh, I've got such a long way to go and I got to do this, I got to do that, all of a sudden psychologically, I don't just think it, but I feel my Buddha nature. And I see myself as this enlightened energy, as this enlightened being. And when we begin to experience that, feel that, it breaks deeply into this ego network that we've created. We've taken the result into the present. So now, as this enlightened energy, we see our environment as our mandala, as the mandala of that particular Buddha. But in reality, what our practice is, we see everything. We see all women as goddesses, as dakinis. Everything we taste, we drink, is nectar that I'm experiencing. So the transformation begins to, we're beginning to transform, transform the path. We're transforming from a confused state that was so confused, it's like a crazy person that doesn't know who they are. We didn't know who we were all this time. So we keep trying this and keep trying that, and go this way and go that way. But all we keep doing is banging into walls, not getting anywhere. All of a sudden, we feel our Buddha nature, and it expresses itself. And by the way, the psychology of this is so powerful because, as you know, these different colors. So, you've heard of, say for example, Vajrayogini. So Vajrayogini is powerful red. That particular is used is for transforming, extreme, desire. Okay, so it's interesting. Like when we go shopping, you go into the supermarket. If you take a look, the places that are smart, they've used psychologists to say, put these things here like this, make it real crowded to make the mind get anxious to buy many things, and use colors like this because that's going to activate wanting to buy more. That's taking energy in a negative way, in a sense, of using it. Not the intelligence of it. The intelligence is right, but it's using it in a way that's wrong, in a sense, to be taking advantage of the people, the shoppers, the people coming in there. Buddha's not taking advantage. He's giving it these things to begin to work on that energy. So when we're working on that, when we begin to work on that energy, there's no room almost for some of this diluted energy to take place. So as we go through the development stage of the Vajrayana path, the Tantra path, taking on that. Oh, I also should mention that in reality, even before entering those, because again, I want this to be somewhat understanding. There are other practices within the Vajrayana before you reach that. There's type of what's called preliminary practices. There's ordinary preliminary practices, and there's more advanced preliminary practices, which has to do with doing retreat of purification of like Vajrasattva, to purify oneself, being in retreat and doing at least 100,000 of the mantras. Okay, and then also you do 100,000 or so of the prostrations and things, and you do these things which is kind of like offering to your guru a mandala. So there's these preliminary practices which begins to purify the vessel in a sense, in order to be able to understand these things and work with them properly. So once we move into those stages and begin to develop, then we also have what's called, as I said, the more or less the completion stages, which is more to do with working with our channels, with our energy, the lung, the wind, and also we call these drops. So the drops basically are like the red drop is down below the navel, and the white is over here. They call it tigle. These two are what, when coming together, is what unifies. And this comes together with, like, especially in tumo practice, with heat, to rise that heat up, and then it melts, melts this energy. That energy is powerful energy. So you begin to work with your, with the energy, within oneself. Okay, and within that practices like this, you then are working in very subtle levels. So when we sit in meditation, we sometimes are going to sit and we'll start to get into our real quiet space, because that space is always there. It's always there to be felt. We get into that very, very quiet space. When that mind gets into that very calm, still, quiet space, that's the subtle mind. We're getting into the subtle consciousness. Within the subtle consciousness, at the same time, is the subtle wind. So they say the wind, the wind and the consciousness mind ride together. So when we're all upset in our, frantic mind and our breathing is really rough, it's the exact opposite of when we get into these very, very, very quiet spaces. When we get into the quiet spaces and with that subtle wind, when we begin to learn to work with that energy and be able to move the energy, the ultimate goal is to be able to move that energy into the central channel. Because once we moved it into the central channel and into these different energy crossroads, chakras, that's where we begin to have, very, very powerful type of experiences, that take place. We begin to see, begin to feel things very differently. So, as we know, when we deal every day, our conscious state of mind affects everything that we do. So if our mind is in a bad mood, wakes up feeling bad, and it's sunny outside, it looks cloudy. The opposite. Once we begin to understand, we can begin to work within our own energy and transform it. Even when it becomes very difficult. Let's say, for example, okay, we learn all the practices. It's bad karma. Don't get upset with somebody. Don't yell at them. Don't harm them. Don't do this. Don't do that. But the energy is so powerful, and we become angry. It's very interesting. If we take our mind off of the object of our anger, and we just try to feel within ourselves, we're going to feel that our energy is very different in a sense. It's going to feel something locking up in some parts of our body. We'll be able to feel that. When we begin to feel that, because it's not permanent, as soon as we start to put our mind onto that and begin to release it, that's why when we do the yoga and things too, we're not trying to get to some spot, we're just working with what we have. When we feel that, we can feel that kind of open up, loosen up, melt away a little bit. Once that begins to melt away, what we're experiencing also becomes very different. So in the Vajrayana path, of course, when we begin to use like the these type of energy and desire energy, also I should mention, even though it's not spoken about a great deal, but within the Vajrayana path, moving through those different levels, as I said, of of the Maha Yoga and Ati Yoga and everything. Through that, there's also what's known as Karma Mudra. Okay, not Karma Sutra, Karma Mudra. Karma Sutra is what some people try to talk about. Their tantric things now in the West with sex and things that they use it. Karma Mudra is actual spiritual practice. Is a practice that was practiced in India, is practiced in India and things. So within that path, a teacher could give somebody, for example, a consort. If it's a male, give them a female or so. But if you're a monk and you're living in a monastery, that breaks your vow, so you don't do that. So through this practice, we take on, in a sense, we use what's called the wisdom consort. So that's why in some of these, I don't think you have any out here, but you'll see a particular deity with the female side. Okay, that's the unification of method and wisdom. So we're beginning to use the energy. So we have the male energy, the female energy. We're beginning to unite that within Vajrayana. It's sun and moon. Okay, this type of energy that's out there, and so these practices are ones that are developed, for us to then become related to that. We've become part of this family, and we begin to use the different energy in order to transform our mind, in a sense. Again, I'd rather say transform our consciousness, our stream of consciousness, because mind is a singular. It makes it sound like there's some real mind inside there, but no matter where we look, we only see that like water. You can't grab it anywhere, it just keeps on moving. The mind is just, moving. But underneath there is pure awareness. That's where, when we practice with, Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and others, clear light, we begin to experience, the state of our awareness knows properly. It sees properly. So within the Vajrayana view, as I spoke to you before about seeing the mandala, how you see yourself, how you see things around, this becomes, the pure view. Begin to work with pure view, and you're purifying quickly, this wrong view that's inside there that's controlled us for such a long time. So it has the ability, to shock. To shock that stream of consciousness. It's an earthquake, all of a sudden cracks, this continuity of this is me and this is the world, and because that's who I am, I have to be that way. We need to know who we are, where we are in the moment, but understand that's a relative level. That's our relative level, relative to where we are now. When we change our awareness, and when we transform ourselves, transform it, that's not who we are. We begin to see that's not really who we are. And so we have the ability to work through and transform. So maybe we should leave a few minutes then if you have a couple questions. Some things I'll be able to answer for you, others I have to be a little careful because within the Vajrayana path, it's also been a very secretive in a sense because it's needs to be given to those who, when they're ready for it, and they meet teachers and develop along that. But some of the different practices and stuff was kept secret. Now they're not kept so secret anymore. There's a lot of stuff that comes out on videos and different things, but sometimes too much information. If we learn this stuff in our conceptual mind, it's not wisdom, it's just knowledge. Once we begin to experience these things and it becomes our reality, there's not separation between us and what it is, then it's it becomes very, very, very different. So I was very fortunate in the sense that my root guru, Lama Yeshe, was beyond belief. There was fireworks would go off in my mind while he would talk, whatever he would do. Whether he was talking, when he was talking, he wasn't just talking. He also made motions. People would see him get big. He'd look smaller. He'd do different things. His communication was beyond belief. And even when he was teaching what seemed to be basic teachings, they were basic to those that didn't understand more, but there was deeper teachings going on at the same time. But only if your mind can understand them. If your mind can't understand it, it's fine. You're still getting something. You're still getting some knowledge, but it's not the same what everybody else is getting. So the root guru that creates an incredible change within you, because of that, because of the ability to communicate and change that, is so powerful. So anything I ever learned and things, and I had many teachers and all of them had their part, but Lama Yeshe as my root guru was just beyond belief. And just to tell you, Lama Yeshe used to say all the time, because people will talk. I think it was, I was reading something not that long ago that was talking about the third Karmapa, who said that we were born with bliss, we live with bliss, and we die with bliss. So our true nature within us is bliss and things. So Lama Yeshe had a heart condition. Everybody, all the doctors in the West and others would look at him and said he's got a few months to live, and of course that was not true. He had, he didn't live a long life, but he'd go on for years beyond that. But they did some type of surgery and looking inside of his chest, and he took no painkiller whatsoever. And so the doctor said, "You're quite a good patient," and he said, "Simply blissful, dear." Everything was just blissful, for him in a sense. So. Fantastic. Fantastic. I'll tell you one story that came up because I was talking to one of my old Dharma friends. Back in I think it was 82, maybe 1982, 1981. There's this place in Australia. So Lama has different centers. I was a spiritual director of Chenrezig Institute for 2.5 years, and then Tara House, which is now Tara Institute in Melbourne. But outside Melbourne, one of the students donated all this land. And this land is a place called Sandhurst Town. And actually right now, if you looked it up, it's got the largest stupa that came out of this, largest stupa in the Western world that's created there. So anyway, the long story short is that what he had on this property was this place was called Sandhurst Town. And so the Sandhurst Town was like here would be like an Old West, but it was more, an Australian Old West or so. And so people used to come there. And so in order to incorporate in with the community, we were going to have a day called Sandhurst Day and invite all the community in to come and see. And Lama was there. Lama was there where I was helping him. He was giving Mahamudra teachings, for that week there. And so the Saturday we met with the committee that was getting everything ready for the Sandhurst Town Day, and the next Saturday. And the weather had been very, very iffy, very bad. It's been bad and cloudy, and of course you want this to be a very nice day. So somebody there was very smart, said, "What do we do if the weather's bad?" So it'd be kind of plan B. What should we do? So Lama looked, said, "Weather will be fine. I guarantee it." So end of discussion there, went on with other things for planning it. So I'm taking Lama back, to his place. And I said, "Lama, why did you have to say guarantee it? Why didn't you say we'll adjust or we'll do something? Why do you have to say, And I've never questioned Lama in my life, but I said, why did you have to say I guarantee it? He turns like this. And his eyes get as big as Mahakala. The wrathful, like this. You doubt me? You know, it was the most amazing energy felt. Okay, fast forward 1 week forward here. Saturday morning, I'm going over to see Lama get ready before going, make sure that everything's ready for him. He's got his breakfast and things. Sky is cloudy as it's been all week. Can't see anything. Just thick clouds, dark clouds sitting up there. Lama's out front doing a fire puja. He finishes the fire puja and the sky completely opens up. As clear as could be for the entire day. Next day it was cloudy again. So anyway, I veered off a little. So anyway, any questions? Anything I can try to clarify?
Yeah, the Mahayana paths you described today in my mind is the summation of your previous talks.
Mm-hmm.
If you do, a guy like me, so
Yeah.
if you follow each one of those
Yeah.
things to the best
No,
of your
you're.
ability,
Yeah.
you probably can say that I'm trying to be in a Mahayana path.
No, that's very good wisdom from you. That's exactly right. Each of the things were, in a sense, was the talks were all kind of, different level moving up into the next. They all fold into the next. So we had the Sutrayana path, which is the Four Noble Truths and the, truth of suffering and understanding, our nature that way, karma, what creates it, the delusions. Moving on to the Mahayana path of developing the, the bodhicitta, the awakened state mind, and then moving into the Vajrayana path. So it's kind of like, I guess, my westernized version of trying to get a little bit of a GPS map of the path. Yeah.
Because as our person who is in a very early stage of this spiritual journey, I think I'm not qualified, I don't have what it takes kind of approach. But if you do a little bit at a time and it's a journey, it's not flip the switch kind of approach.
No, absolutely. That's what it is. I mean, the reality is that if some of the things, begin to clarify certain things inside of your mind, it's going to allow you to work with it. And, as I said, there's all different levels along the path. But the most important thing is where you are at the time, working with yourself. I mean, at some points, I think it's very smart to be, if you get into a situation and for some reason your energy level is really bad, physically, so you might not be able to, let's say, want to sit and do meditation. But you may be able to do a little bit of yoga. And once you do some of the yoga, the physical, and you unlock. So now you're starting to work with the energy levels. We don't know what's causing this energy level. It's karma. It's a certain karmic thing. I mean, we might want to relate it on a Western thing and say, okay, I had a bad dream last night and things. But let's face it, when we wake up from a dream, in some ways we should be smart enough to say, okay, that was just a dream. But our waking state is like a dream too, So it's not easy. But if you begin to work with, that's why I said that beginning to work with energy, that something's getting you very upset. So as they try to do with children now, they teach them that if they, watch your breathing, breathe in, breathe out. You're taking your mind off of that. You're putting your mind on your breath. Your breath is with your mind at that time. As I said, they ride together. That's smart. That's intelligent technique. You have something very powerful. As I said, it's kind of interesting once we begin to work with some of this energy that we begin to feel, where the blockages are. So when we're sitting there, when we sit in our meditation and the blockages are taking place, and our awareness recognizes them, if we don't fight with them, if we don't grasp at getting away from them, they somehow dissipate like the clouds. I remember when I was a teenager, somebody said, "Look, I can make the clouds break up." So he sits up there and stares, and the clouds break. He said, "Go ahead, try it. You can sit there. You can break the clouds up. With just not the real heavy ones, but the light ones. You sit there and look at it. Well, if you're not breaking them up. That's what's called impermanence. Everything's changing moment by moment. So those things, they move, they change, and then they dissolve back into the open space, into the sky. So the energy that's been blocking us has no absolute reality and can dissipate.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's kind of like two different ways that I experienced that just recently. So first off, when I'm able to go to the lake in the morning, it's very powerful. I can't get out there every morning, but like very cold water, your body doesn't want to do it because it's cold and it's early, but you just do it and it like shifts your whole being.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a yogic practice just to.
Oh no, it's not. It is. It is a yogic practice in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of helps you, those types of things. And before I was injured, I was doing all sorts of running and biking and yoga, really strong yoga.
Yeah.
Because I understood that really young. Well, not really young, but like young enough.
Yeah.
When I was still in my teens. So I started to do that every day, and then probably overtrained a little bit. And then in music, it's the same thing. Music is a dropping of the self and just being with it. And there's kind of mutual inspiration that arises. You know, when you have a gig, everything about the gig is stressful except the moment you get to play.
Yeah.
You're going through traffic.
Your anticipation.
You're dealing with like this terrible business and all these crazy egos. But then when you get to play, you let go of everything, right?
Yeah.
So I did that with my teaching too. So I met two African American kids this week at Baker. And the funniest little kids. They got their mask on. They're twins, a boy and a girl. And I was tired showing up to that, and I'm like, okay, this is their first lesson, and it's a practice for me. I don't think a lot of even music teachers understand the depth of what you can do with a kid in a music lesson, right?
Yeah.
So I always drop myself, like when I try to get a little early there, and then I just kind of like, okay, I set my intention for them that they're having their first lesson. It doesn't matter how I just want it to be positive. But I really don't know. I don't know them, and I don't know what energy they're going to come with and whatever. But these kids were so hilarious. Like they had comments on every little part of the instruction, and it was an hour long, and they had just the funniest.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we don't put our guitar that way. Why? And they still raise their hand, but they talk even when they raise their hand, and then they'll just add to it. They'll be like, well, if you put your guitar like that, then what's going to happen? Someone's going to come. And they just make these wonderful, like, creative. And you're just like, that's right. And then you keep going. So it's just completely fun, hour long. And then at the end, I'm like, well, was that too long for you or just right or a little too short? They're like, that's felt like 5 minutes, And it was just this fun experience, and it was me just
you're working with energy there. Mm-hmm. You've made yourself sensitive to them. And then, of course, you need to remember that music is vibration. Mantra is vibration. Okay, so in the Vajrayana path, the Tantric path, same thing. You begin to work with different energies. That's why sometimes it's hard. Just even sitting is not necessarily good, but you can repeat mantras. The mantras, put your mind into the same place. Okay, so you're able to do that. So
yeah, that's actually when I'm tired, I just do that in my car wherever I'm going. So when I was going to them and not feeling, then I start chanting. So yeah, I think that's it, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why it's sort of beyond the business stuff. The business stuff is there, but that's just the like lower realm. The higher realm of this is it's one with what we're trying to do. At least it's been for my life.
No, that's good.
And for John's life, who's going to come by too.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, the path we talked about today, which is the Tantric path.
Yeah, Vajrayana path.
Yeah. It's sort of like taking the end result and bringing it to the present.
Yeah.
So that's very powerful because, maybe when I was first practicing yoga, I thought there was somewhere to get to.
Right.
Or Zen, I'm going to sit these retreats and I'm going to have some awakening. And insights do come when you quiet the mind, but I like this idea, or I feel like it's a very powerful idea to be like, it's not quite fake it till you make it, but it's kind of like bringing the end result to the present moment. So
Yeah.
maybe, you know, yeah, so it's this enlightened mind, this awareness that you can always bring to the present moment. Apparently, however you're feeling, wherever your energy is
Yeah.
at, or whatever, if you can drop into it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's 100% right, and that's what the practice is to recognize that. Yeah, because in the final stages and things there, a Dzogchen, more or less, Dzog is like great, and Chen means completion. Your mind is, begins to recognize, and once it's, the great completion, then it's always there. It's all good. It's all there. Whatever it is, it's work. It's something you can, deal with. Yes, you can, feel it, develop it. So.
Yeah, and then even as a practitioner, how much am I there? I don't know. Some percentage of my life, but surely not all of it, right?
Yeah.
And if we took the average person, it'd be much, much less. They might not even be aware of it.
Yeah.
Because we're not raised with that, and it's sort of sad. It's like a sad way of our life, right? If life is bliss, and we all have this potentiality, we'd be treating each other very differently, and enjoying our life much more, right?
Well, we all have close family and friends, and you begin to realize that you probably have, well, I'm sure you do. You have almost more success in touching the people you're teaching with the music than we have sometimes in awakening somebody, saying, hey, look you're taking your life down the wrong road, and that's where you develop more and more energy and compassion for the path, because you realize we need to develop this wisdom and understanding in order to help change something, move somebody from one spot to another, because basically so stuck within that karma. The karma is not permanent, but it's almost the same as it. You're in concrete right then. But unless you have the ability to show them that actually within that concrete, it's not solid. There's space in there. Find that space.
Yeah, it seems like obviously when they're younger, they have it flowing. They're caught. They can get caught here and there, but it's more immediate, up and down. But they have it more flowing. By the time they're like 13, they're negotiators, and they're so attached to their brains, their thinking, that it's really hard to break into that. And then you can almost get into ego conflict with people like that. So I just pull back and I wait and watch. But then sometimes I think, okay, I gotta cut into that, because that's not serving them. So it's very tricky. It always changes. And then
that's just a dance, in a sense, that you, if somehow you can spark something, it's good to do. If you've got that wisdom that says, I can say this or do this, and that's actually going to spark something, rather than have them dig in deeper, that's the key. Because if they dig in deeper, then what's happened is that this conceptual network just becomes solidified. Break into that concept somehow and get into pure awareness, then it's good to do. So it's all doing a little bit at a time, So, all right, the parking's sending me a message here.
Me too.